Okay, everybody, go ahead and open your books to page 727. Yesterday in class, well, Tuesday by the time you watch this, we read Lewis Carroll's Jabberwocky, which I'm going to read again. And then we're going to go over the analysis on page 727, an analysis provided by no less than Humpty Dumpty. So let's start with the poem one more time. 'Twas brillig and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the momraths outgrabe. Beware the jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that snatch. Beware the jubjub bird, and shun the fruminous bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the manxome foe he sought. So rested he by the tum-tum tree, and stood a while in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, the jabberwock with eyes of flame came whiffling through the tulgey wood, and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O frabjous day, callooh, callay, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the momraths outgrabe. So Humpty Dumpty and Alice have a conversation, which is recorded on page 727. You seem very clever at explaining words, sir, said Alice. Would you kindly tell me the meaning of the poem called Jabberwocky? Let's hear it, said Humpty Dumpty. I can explain all the poems that were ever invented, and a good many that haven't been invented just yet. This sounded very hopeful, so Alice repeated the first verse. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the momraths outgrabe. That's enough to begin with, Humpty Dumpty interrupted. There are plenty of hard words there. Brillig means 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the time when you begin broiling things for dinner. That'll do very well, said Alice. And slithy? Well, slithy means lithe and slimy. Lithe is the same as active. You see, it's like a portmanteau. There are two meanings packed up in one word. I see it now, Alice remarked thoughtfully. And what are toves? Well, toves are something like badgers, they're something like lizards, and they're something like corkscrews. That must be a very curious-looking creature. They are that, said Humpty Dumpty. Also, they make their nests under sundials. Also, they live on cheese. And what's to gyre and to gimble? To gyre is to go round and round like a gyroscope. To gimble is to make holes like a gimlet. And the wabe is the grass plot around a sundial, I suppose, said Alice, surprised at her own ingenuity. Of course it is. It's called wabe, you know, because it goes a long way before it, and a long way behind it. And a long way beyond it on each side, Alice added. Exactly so. Well then, mimsy is flimsy and miserable. There's another portmanteau for you. And borogrove is a thin, shabby-looking bird with its feathers sticking out all around, something like a live mop. And what does outgrabe mean? Well, outgrabing is something between bellowing and whistling, with a kind of sneeze in the middle. However, you'll hear it done, maybe, down in the wood yonder, and when you've once heard it, you'll be quite content. Who's been repeating all that hard stuff to you? I read it in a book, said Alice. So there is silliness even in the explanation, but what's fascinating is the fact that you have a complete nonsense poem that almost begins to make sense. One of your assignments for this week is to just take the first and last verse. They're the same, so call it the first one, call it the last one. And what I want you to do is to identify every word as its relevant part of speech. So, for example, 'twas is it was, so it is a pronoun, was is a verb. And go through the entire first verse and identify what each part of speech is, okay? Now, we will move on to another poem, which on first blush might strike you as a nonsense poem. However, it is not a nonsense poem. It's a very meaningful poem. Now, the poems that we looked at earlier this week were very much face value poems. You didn't need to do a great deal of thinking to figure out what was being said. Maybe one or two words like countenance that you weren't exactly sure what it meant, but nonetheless, you read Waltz with Papa a couple times, and there's no doubt what's going on. How you process that might vary from individual to individual, but the poem itself is very easy to understand. This next poem, not so much. Again, one of my favorite poets, a gentleman by the name of E. Cummings. He disdained punctuation and capital letters. The only time he ever used capital letters was in reference to God or Scripture. In this particular poem, he very intentionally does not capitalize the word God, and you may see why. I'm going to read it. It technically is a sonnet. You may recall that we have the Italian and we have the English sonnet. The Italian sonnet is 8 lines that pose a question and then 6 lines that either provide an answer or provide a counterpoint to the original 8 lines. The English sonnet is 3 groups of 4 lines for a total of 12, and then a concluding couplet, 2 lines. This poem is in fact 14 lines long, but what is interesting about it is instead of a couplet at the end, it has a single line. So it has 13 lines and then a line at the end. So let me read it to you. I'll read it a couple of times, and then you can sort of ponder it, and I will give you a very brief explanation of what's going on, and then after that you'll have another assignment. Your grammar assignment with Jabberwocky will be due Monday, so will the assignments out of this be due Monday. So here we go. Next to, of course, God, America, I, which is an interesting title. It's also the very first line of the poem. Next to, of course, God, America, I love you, land of the pilgrims, and so forth. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early, my country 'tis of centuries come and go, and are no more. What of it? We should worry in every language, even deaf and dumb. Thy sons acclaim your glorious name, by gory, by jingo, by gee, by gosh, by gum. Why talk of beauty? What could be more beautiful than these heroic, happy dead who rushed like lions to the roaring slaughter? They did not stop to think. They died instead. Then shall the voice of liberty be mute? He spoke and drank rapidly a glass of water. And you sit there and say, what the heck did I just read? All right, well, we'll read it one more time. Next to, of course, God, America, I love you, land of the pilgrims, and so forth. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early, my country 'tis of centuries come and go, and are no more. What of it? We should worry in every language, even deaf and dumb. Thy sons acclaim your glorious name, by gory, by jingo, by gee, by gosh, by gum. Why talk of beauty? What could be more beautiful than these heroic, happy dead, who rushed like lions to the roaring slaughter? They did not stop to think. They died instead. Then shall the voice of liberty be mute? He spoke and drank rapidly a glass of water. Your first question to ask then is, what is this poem? And even if you don't understand a lot of it, you should get the sense that this has a lot of patriotic expressions in it. In fact, this poem is mocking patriotic speeches. It's making fun of that politician who is full of God bless America, doesn't really say anything, and when he's done speaking, he's more interested in having a glass of water when he's done than in anything that he had to say. That is the theme of the poem. Now, what I want you to do is a couple of things. First of all, I want you to tell me what the rhyme scheme is. If you remember our discussions on rhyme scheme, I want you to figure out what the rhyme scheme is. Remember, we do that by designating each line as a letter of the alphabet. So if I said, here's a poem by the guy who wrote Winnie the Pooh. John put his great big Macintosh boots on. John wore his great big Macintosh hat. John put his great big Macintosh coat on. And that, said John, is that. So we have an A-B rhyme scheme there. The word on and on, obviously the same word, so it rhymes, and then hat and that rhyme. So we would designate that little short poem with a rhyme scheme of A-B. And if you have any questions on that, just send me a note in Skype and I'll go over it. We can either talk on the phone or I can type something out for you. So hopefully you remember what rhyme scheme is. What you need to do is tell me what the rhyme scheme is here. It's going to end up being 14 letters. Okay, and figure out which lines rhyme with which lines. Okay, the second thing I want you to do is to answer the questions, the 3 questions at the bottom of page 736. They should not be difficult questions. They might be a little bit challenging. Give it your best effort. As I said, this is going to be due on Monday. Okay, you will have Thursday and Friday to work on it. These are the only assignments you have, and these will be due Monday. Bring them in Monday to class. So, rhyme scheme, answer the 3 questions, and then in class on Monday, what I'm going to have you do is attempt to explain the poem. Okay, we won't do that as a written assignment. We'll do that orally unless it looks like we need to do it as a written assignment, and see if you can figure out everything that's going on in this poem. Okay, so we're not going to do a TP cast on it. We're not going to write an essay on it. You're just going to tell me what the rhyme scheme is, answer the 3 questions at the bottom of page 236, and then on Monday, be prepared to discuss what you think the meaning of the poem is. Okay? That's not a bad class time. As I'm looking at the video counter, it says just over 12 minutes, so that wasn't too unbearable. So I'm going to post this to YouTube right now on Wednesday evening, and then you will have all day Thursday, Friday to do this assignment. Okay? Thanks, guys. If you have any questions, just send a Skype to me.